Jumping between pages doesn't have to feel jarring. With Page Effects and Framer, we can add smooth transitions that make our sites feel more cohesive, almost more app-like. In this lesson, I'll show you how easy it is to animate between pages in Framer. Let's take a quick look at what it is that we're trying to build here in the first place. Let's look at the starting point. This website has 3 simple pages, and as we click from page to page, we get an instantaneous transition from one page to the next, like you'd expect. That's the default behavior of clicking on a link on the web. But if I head over to our completed example to show where we're headed here, now when I click, we get this animated transition where the page we're coming from gets pushed away and the page we're going to gets pushed into view. So quite a bit more visually dynamic. I'll close the tab for my completed example here and go back to our start project. And you'll find a link to remix this start project in the description below. But here again, we've got 3 pages, a home page, a stories page, and a page called features. But I'm gonna go back to the home page, and I also wanna show you that our nav items are actually an instance of a component. And if I double click on this component, you can see that I have several variants. I have one for each page showing the active nav item that clarifies which page we're currently on. And if I preview this component, it's actually animated, but we didn't see those animations happening because as soon as we clicked on one of the links, it loaded the next page, so we never got to see this animation happen. We're gonna come back to that. But for now, I'm gonna leave the preview and head back to our home page. And now it's time to make the magic happen with what are called page effects. And what we do is we add a page effect to the page that we're transitioning from. So here we'll start with our home page. Now to add a page effect in the first place, we have to select the desktop breakpoint. And with the breakpoint selected, we can come down here to effects on the properties panel. And when we click, we get 2 different options. Now these are both for adding page effects. We can either choose to add a page effect to all pages. We can add the same effect to every page of the entire site all at once, or we can choose to add an effect that goes from this page to another specific page. All pages is nice, especially if you have a large site. If you have tens or even hundreds of pages, you can take care of the transition from every page to every page by setting it up just once here. So let's actually do that. I'm gonna click all pages, and then here in the popover, you'll see that our target is indeed set to all pages. But one thing I also wanna point out is that the all pages option only shows up when you're editing the home page. If you're editing any other page of the site, you won't get the all pages option. So if you're not seeing it, make sure you're looking at the home page. And then we have some preset animations that we can choose from. And these are a lot like the animation effects that we talked about earlier in the course. We have things like fades, we have slides, we have pushes, which is what you saw in the example at the beginning. And then we have some wipes that actually use a mask to reveal what's underneath. I'm gonna go with push left as our default for all of our pages here. And here we see an effect for this page and an effect for the next page. In this case, instead of next page, it actually says any page because we're targeting all of the pages of the site at the same time right now. But the reason we have 2 effects is because a transition has 2 parts, how the current page exits from view and how the next page enters into view. And you can really think of these like the animation effects that we learned about earlier in the course. But instead of animating a layer, we're animating an entire page, the entire page within the viewport as if it's one gigantic layer. And in this case, we've got the page we're looking at now, that's one gigantic layer. And then we have the page we're transitioning to, which is the second gigantic layer. So in the event of push, we're sliding the current page out of view. And at the same time, we're sliding the next page into view. So the new page is pushing the old page out of the way, hence the name push. And we can, of course, click in here to make changes to the animation effect that's happening to the outgoing page and the incoming page. We can play with opacity, scale, rotation, offset, in this case, negative 100%, which means move 100% of your own width out of the way on the x-axis. In this case, a negative number means move to the left. A positive number would mean move to the right. And similarly, a y-offset would let us move the page up or down. We also get a special little setting here called mask, which lets us choose from a variety of different presets to wipe away or reveal the page on the screen. And you get a little preview below that shows what each one does and different parameters to play with depending on which type you choose. And then if we go back, last but not least, we have our transition where we can customize the easing or spring, and we can set a duration for the transition that takes place. So a lot of what you'd expect from animation effects, but with the added bonus of those masks. I'm going to go back a couple of times and I'm just going to switch us to that push left preset that I had chosen before. And now let's preview this. Let's see what we've actually ended up with here. I'm going to press Command P on my Mac to go into preview. And now when I go from home to stories, we should get that push left effect. And boom, there it is. And since we chose to apply this to all pages, when I go from stories to features, we get the push left again. But when I go from features to stories, it still pushes left. And from stories to home, it still pushes left, which in my opinion feels kind of backwards because we've got this physically plausible slide from one page to the other. If you go backwards, the transition should theoretically go in the other direction. So let's fix that. Starting with the stories page, I'm going to head to the pages panel. I'm going to go to the stories page. And again, we've got to select the breakpoint to add an effect. And what's cool is that even though we have push left set to all pages really means all pages unless specified otherwise. So here, we're going to specify otherwise. I'm going to click to add an effect. And I do want the target set to home because I'm setting the transition from the page that we're on, which is stories, to the home page, which again, that's one of the ones that should go the opposite direction. And I'm going to switch the preset here to push right instead of push left. And now we should be all good because the only time that we're transitioning from stories to a page that's the other direction is when we're going from stories to home. When we go from stories to features, we're still pushing left. We're still going in the same direction as what we set on all pages. So we don't have to go and set that one again manually. But let's preview this. Let's make sure that it's looking all good. We're on the stories page. I'm going to click to go to home. We should get the push right. There we go. So home to stories, push left, stories to home, push right. And then last but not least, we'll just have to fix the transitions going from the features page to both stories and home. So we'll have to set two effects, one to target each of those two pages. And we'll do that now. I'll leave preview mode, head to the features page, again, select the breakpoint for the page, and then head down here to effects and click to add that first effect. It defaulted to home, which is one of the targets that we want to fix. And I'm going to switch that from crossfade again to push right. And then I'll add one more, again, by clicking on effects. And then that automatically defaulted to stories because we had already set an effect for the other page. And again, I'll set the preset to push right. Now we should be really good to go. I'll press Command P again on my Mac to preview. We're starting on the features page here. And when I click over to stories, there we go, pushing in the correct direction. When I go from stories to home, again, we already fixed that one. From home to features, all good. And then from features all the way back over to home, again, we're all good. But I did mention earlier that this navbar component was animated, and we don't get to see the animation because it slides off the screen and then comes back. In fact, the entire header bar slides off the screen only to get pushed back in, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's what we would call a persistent element. It's an element that was there before and is there after. It should really just stay put. And that's exactly what we're going to fix in the next lesson. And there you have it. With page effects, your site flows from one page to the next. It's a small touch that helps everything feel more like a product and less like a collection of separate pages. That's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one.